are going to flip over to Chris Burns, who is patiently waiting. And Chris is a serial entrepreneur at heart. He's a two-time published author, a keynote speaker, and an adjunct professor with a deep passion for digital marketing. With over 20 years in the marketing industry, Chris has helped hundreds of businesses, including his own, to thrive by embracing digital marketing. His approach has always been about helping businesses shine in their uniqueness, steering them away from the mundane and into the spotlight. His goal with most things is to make it so easy it's fun. So easy you'll have no excuses. Chris is also a co-founder of Hustle Leadership and a co-host of Hustle Nation podcast. I know you probably have a PowerPoint, right?
I do.
Okay, so I'm actually unable to make you a co-host, but I am able to make you a host. So if you see anyone coming in, you'll have to let them in.
I'll do my best.
And with that,
well, thanks, Marianne. Thanks for having me. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Well, happy to be here. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to come to the summit and to listen to me speak. I'll do my best to try to shave off a few minutes, which I think I can, to get everybody caught up a little bit. But today I'm going to talk a little bit about something you might be familiar with, and I'm going to just go into present mode to make this a little bit more enjoyable for you. And I talk about this because I've been there myself, and a lot of people talk about being busy as a badge of honor, talking about working 60 hours a week or 70 hours a week, which I'm sure we've all done, including myself. But so often we say that, but are we really productive? Are we really getting things done? And this is kind of what leads to burnout, leads to a lot of negative things that can happen. And so I want to talk about how to go from busy to generating results, and using vision, having a vision for the future to get out of the hamster wheel, avoid burnout, and maximize your productivity. So as Marianne said, I'm a kind of serial entrepreneur, lifelong entrepreneur for the most part. I've been in business for 20 years, been in marketing for 20 years, been a coaching consultant for 5. So I've had an opportunity, even in my young life, to see many, many ups and downs myself, see many ups and downs of friends and family and fellow entrepreneurs. And I've had the pleasure of helping a lot of people through some of those. And so I can tell you firsthand a lot of the stuff that works and a lot of it that doesn't. And starting with the stuff that doesn't work for sure, because I feel like I've done it all at this point. But let's talk about this. This is something that probably looks a little familiar, whether you've had a pet hamster or gerbil. And before I get into this, I just want to say there's a QR code there. And as part of it, it's a document that's a free download that you're all welcome to access. We won't spam you with anything if you download it, but you'll be able to follow along and work through this workshop in a way that I think and I hope will add a lot of value to your day. Now, rhetorical question, does it look familiar? Is this something you've been in before? Has anyone else been there? I'm sure they have. I know I have. Where it doesn't matter how many hours you put in, how hard you work, how much you sacrifice, your friendships, your relationships, your weekends, your nights, you just keep spinning faster and faster and you're still in that damn hamster wheel. Well, if that's you or someone you know, stay tuned, because that's what we're going to talk about. But what does it lead to? It leads to this. It leads to burnout, frustration, health issues, which certainly had my fair share of because of the hamster wheel. But there are ways to maximize your output without working more. And that's really a lot of what we're about. Is there's this word hustle that, unfortunately, due to people like Gary Vaynerchuk, love the guy, and other entrepreneurs, they've said last 10 years, hey, if you want to get where you want to go, you got to hustle. You got to sacrifice your life, your health, your relationships, all these things, your sleep, to get where you want to go. And I don't necessarily believe that's true, because it's certainly not sustainable. So the word hustle has a negative connotation, unfortunately. So we're out to change that. We're out to make hustle a positive word again, because we believe that you can hustle without working more than your allotted amount of time, which for most of us is 40 hours a week. If you have kids, you have business, or like Marianne, 100 businesses, we only have so much time that we can dedicate. And therefore, I'm not going to say to get where you want to go, you have to work more. It's about working smarter, not just harder, amongst other things. So let's talk about this burnout thing because we want to prevent it. So more importantly, why do entrepreneurs oftentimes come up short? And maybe it's because we raise the bar too high. Maybe it's a lot of things. But many of them will say, air quotes, fail, or ultimately they quit before things finally click. And that's just it. A lot of us kind of hit this wall and we get frustrated because we're not where we want to be 2 years, 5 years in. So why do you think that is? And you could just think about that. It's a rhetorical question for a moment. And maybe you've been there. Maybe you've tried something and you're just like, it's not working. I'm done. Well, I'll tell you why I think that's the case. Number one, they don't have a strategy. I've had the pleasure of meeting thousands of entrepreneurs and business leaders in my life. And the one thing that continues to be true, and I ask this question of almost everybody, do you have a strategy? Do you have a plan? The answer is almost always no. So if you were to talk to a coach of a professional sports team, football, soccer, basketball, whatever, do they show up to a game or show up for a season without a strategy? The answer would be no. And if they did, they should expect to fail and get fired. Why? Because you're only as good as your plan. If you don't have a plan, that means you're showing up every day without any rhyme or reason doing, well, let's try this. Well, let's try that. Well, let's try TikTok. Well, that didn't work. So let's try Facebook. You have to have consistency and strategy. Those are the two key pillars to why businesses are typically successful. So if any of this is starting to resonate, use that QR code, download this vision guide we're going to talk about, because I think it's going to add a lot of value. It's something we charge a lot of money for. When we do some workshops, we go through it a lot more deeper than we're going to dive into today, but it's a really wonderful resource. So this is what I see. When I talk to these entrepreneurs who don't have a strategy, there is two big things. The ones who are successful look like the ones on the right. They're making progress. They're taking action. They're focusing on the big things, the 80-20 rule. They're cutting out 80% of the work to focus on the things that generate the biggest amount of impact. The 80% is the busy work. It's the checking of the email, it's sending invoices, following up on phone calls. It's the administrative stuff that's holding you back. But the motion, that's the motion, sorry. The progress is the action, taking the massive action, doing things to work on your business, not work in your business, changing your behavior to get out of the hamster wheel, to start to work on the scaling and growing of the business, not the minutia of the day-to-day. Big juxtaposition for a lot of entrepreneurs here. The motion is the dog chasing its tail for hours and hours and hours, and the motion is picking up the phone call, making cold calls, sending cold emails, prospecting, building that pipeline, a lot of the things we tend to avoid even as seasoned, successful entrepreneurs. So I'd be curious, and unfortunately we don't have time to unmute ourselves and have a really in-depth conversation, but I asked this question on stage: how many of you have a strategy? I do a lot of workshops, a lot of events, and I'm not kidding when I say less than 10%. Typically a room of 200, I get maybe 10 to 12, and then I'll ask the follow-up question. Keep your hand up if you have a strategy in document format that you can print, and to the point to where you've actually used it or looked at it in the last year. And if you don't, you can't say that. You don't have a plan. You might say, Chris, well, it's in my head. Doesn't count. That's not a plan. That's not a strategy. That is a hope and a prayer. And you're not going to generate the kind of success you want based on that. So people who say, oh, it's in my head, or, I've tried this, I've tried that, and I worked so hard and it's not working. Well, they follow what I call the light switch theory. I'm sure I wasn't the person to invent this, but I talk about it a lot. And it's very much reactionary leadership. It's reactionary marketing, opposed to being strategic. So let's talk about that for a moment. So often I talk about the theory of, someone says, hey, Chris, I got 15 people on my team. I run this thriving, growing company. But I have employee turnover, 2 people quit, I have to replace them right away. So what do people do? They go to Facebook, they create a job post, and they say, hey, we're hiring. Well, I would say, so what? You're reacting based on a need. You're not being proactive, which being proactive is being strategic, by the way. If you were being proactive, you would always be talking about on social media, always be talking about on your website, the type of culture you have, the type of opportunity, how you care about your people, how you give back, how you are involved in the community. And the same would be true of sales. A lot of us entrepreneurs go through these peaks and valleys of revenue and profitability. Like, oh, sales are down, we better do something, let's have a discount. That's the worst thing you could do. Why don't we be proactive and always try to fill that pipeline? We're always prospecting. We're always talking about our product and service in a unique way online. We're always networking. We're always doing workshops like this. And if you do that, you're always going to have leads in your pipeline. But if you don't, right, if you get too distracted by doing stuff over here, working in the business, not on the business, you're going to be reactive. And so being proactive is being strategic. We cannot flip a switch and say, oh, sales are down, we better do something about it. That is not how we run a business successfully, or more importantly, sustainably. Because if it's not sustainable, we're just back in the hamster wheel again. So how do you become proactive? You might say, well, Chris, you already told me. We're going to do a strategy. We're going to have a strategy. That's how we do it. And you would be, mostly right on that. But think a little bit deeper, a little bit further. What I'm going to tell you is probably something you've overlooked for a very long time. Maybe something you used to do back when you were in school, high school, college, whatever. But it's something everyone could and should do, and honestly takes about 5 minutes a day at best. And that would be being strategic by using a daily planner. Now, we happen to have one. It's available on Amazon if anyone's interested. I make like $4 if you buy it, so I'm not really here to sell planners. But we decided to create our own because we just couldn't find one that worked for us. And what a planner is going to do for you is it's going to be your personalized strategy if done properly. It's going to prevent things from slipping through the cracks, which, by the way, we as entrepreneurs we always feel like we have ADHD because we're doing too many things, we're too distracted, we're not focused on what's most important. Planner will help you with that. And if things don't slip through the cracks, it's going to relieve some stress and some anxiety. It's going to allow you to be a little more focused. Also, it gives you a higher follow-through rate. So if you're doing the things you say you're going to do, and you're telling your clients and your team you're going to do, that also gives you more confidence, more clarity, and then it keeps your goals top of mind. So I always tell my wife, if I forgot about something, it's like out of sight, out of mind. That's how I work. I need to write down my goals at least once a week or once a month to be able to say, oh yeah, I can't forget. Won't let myself forget. I won't let myself forget that these were the goals I set forth, because 2 months in, you're like, oh shit, that goal's out of hand for this year. That's not going to work. So you have to write them down. You got to keep them in front of you. And results yield confidence. So if you can stack daily victories, you win the week. If you win the weeks, you win the month. And if you win the month, you win the quarter. And guess what happens? You get the point. You'll win the year. You will achieve your goals and your results, the results you aimed out to get. And so a daily planner is so much more critical than you could believe. But you got to really use it to believe it. So I had a light bulb moment for me, and that one of them was using the planner. There's no question about that. But ultimately, I had a light bulb moment for me, and we'll talk about this theory here. And I want to go into what was really important. And it was what I call the CTFIR model. Now, I did not invent this for credibility and credential purposes. It's just something that I use and has been around for a long time. And here's my circumstance. I was in my early 30s, recently married, 3 kids, big new house, a job I disliked, and I was unhappy. I was not taking care of myself. I was not prioritizing sleep. I was probably working 65 hours a week, trying to write a book at the same time. And, I loved a lot of my life. I just didn't love my job. And a lot of that bled through. I was eating fast food. I was not eating well. I was probably drinking a little too much alcohol. And my body just said, we're done. It shut down. I found out I had cancer, and I had negative thoughts. I felt like I was going to die. That's what I felt like. That's what I thought. And my actions were I was laying in a hospital bed, mostly alone because my wife was working, had a good job. taking care of the kids at home. And I was like, oh, I'm a victim. Look at me. This is it. I'm probably going to end up dying early and not going to leave a legacy for my kids. And if I were to continue that way, I would have continued to take 16 pills a day, and I say air quotes, be a cancer patient. I like just act like a victim, right? Not that all people do that, but that could have been the results, and that could have been my circumstance. But I said, you know what? No, forget it. I'm way too young for this. I need to change things. I need to change the way I think. I need to change the way I feel. You get the point. So here's what happened. I said, man, I've never felt this negative in my life. So I'd read a book shortly after, and it was changing my thoughts. And I thought, if I can think positive about what could be, how I could be a father, I could see my kids grow up, see my daughters get married, etc. Boy, that would be awesome. That would just be amazing. That made me feel really good. And then I said, well, shit, to get there, I have to change some things, right? I'm going to have to work out. I work out every day. I'm going to have to eat clean, eat better, right? So I do that. I'm a stickler on that. I'm going to have to prioritize my sleep. And I need to do a better job with my relationships. I need to do a better job with some of the decisions I make. And guess what? I've never been better. I don't take any of the medicine that they've prescribed. And I've never felt better fast forward 10 years later. And the result is I've changed my circumstances. I've changed the result. Not everybody can do that. I am very lucky. I'm very fortunate, and I get that. But I believe that 90 to 95% of the time the cards were dealt, we can. And that was my light bulb moment. And that's why I had to really bring in tools like a planner to help me get there. And so I kind of asked myself, where am I? And where do I want to go? And at the time, it was this calendar year, not 5 years from now, because as an entrepreneur, I may be doing something totally different in 6 months, right? So I'd ask myself that. And I didn't know the answer. Like I had made up some stuff, like I want to make this amount of money and I want to have this lifestyle, but what does that actually mean? Right? It's not really a vision, because I didn't know it. I didn't have that answer. I didn't have clarity of vision. I need, when I ask this question, like, what do you really want this year? I need you to have an answer for me. I need you to have an answer, kind of like be able to spit it out right now without having to put 2 or 3 minutes of thought into it. And something that really means something to you, not just like, oh yeah, well, how much money I need to make to survive. That's not a vision. I kind of would love to lose about 25 pounds. That's not really a vision, because you can't tell me why that's important or why you want to do that. So if you don't have vision, this is one of the number one reasons why people come up short. And so we have this 2020 vision guide, charge a lot of money for workshops to deep dive into this. And we're going to talk about it briefly here. Another QR code, another opportunity to download this guide free of charge. And what I want to start with is your vision and your personal why. Now, to me, I'm going to give you mine without any rhyme or reason necessarily in order, but I know the things, and yours might be different than mine. Number one, I want to leave a legacy for my kids. I want my kids to say, you know what, Dad was a good man. He was a good businessman. He was fair and honest, treated people well. He was a steward of his community. He gave back, and he cared about people. I also want them to remember them having a good dad, being involved, being a coach, being at the games, being there when we're going through tough times. I would like my wife to have those same memories too. I would like to be able to provide ways that I can take them on vacations and they can have nice things. And so what I've basically said is that I need to make a certain amount of income so that I can give back my time and my money. I want to be able to make a certain amount of income to be able to provide the things that I didn't have growing up. And so I need to not only make a certain amount of income, but I need to be able to create a lifestyle where I have extra time to be a more involved and present father and husband. And so what does that mean? Let's break that down. Well, if I have to fill a lot of cups, my kids, my family, my clients, my team, well, I need to prioritize my health because I need to have the energy to do that. So I need to work out 5 times a week at minimum. So that's, what do I need to achieve? I need to maintain half hour of workout time 5 days a week to get there. Otherwise, I won't have the energy, and I'm going to fall back into my old routines. Relationships. I need to have strong relationships with my family, my wife, my closest friends. That's important to me. So what does that mean? Well, I have to call my loved ones once a week at least. My mindset. I need to have a strong positive mindset. So to do that, I need to read, and I've read 25 books already this year. So under education, I'm going to read 30 to 40 books a year. I'm going to listen to podcasts. I'm going to listen to audiobooks because I need to be mentally strong. I need to have intelligent conversations with my clients. Business. This is what I want to achieve this year, not just revenue or profitability. Maybe I'm starting a business. Maybe I'm launching a new product or I'm investing in something. And then I'm going to write down those specific goals. Because again, you can have a why, but you need to understand what you need to do to get there. What are those behaviors and actions that you need to get to achieving this vision? And then as we flip this around, you'll see we have behaviors. Now, the actual thing I need to do, I need to work out every day. I need to read 25 to 35 books a year. I need to call my loved ones once a week. And you can identify whatever behaviors there are from there. Now, I have mine written down, kind of put away in my file cabinet, so I'm not going to go through all those things. Then, more importantly, what are your excuses? What are those BS excuses you've been giving yourself or your family, your loved ones? That's like, oh, I don't have time. I don't have time. I hear this all the time. Okay, well, stop binge watching Netflix for 5 hours a week. Chris, I can't read as much as you. I don't have time. Okay, well, instead of watching TV while you lay in bed for an hour, turn it off because it's certainly not adding any value. Read a book or catch up on your email then, or whatever you need to do, right? Or, I don't have the money. Okay, well, buy some stuff at Goodwill or, wherever, thrift store, and flip it. Make some extra money. Make a couple $100 a month because that's also a BS answer. Identify whatever those things are. Well, I don't know how to do that. Okay, read a book, listen to a podcast. And then more importantly, what would it mean to achieve all these things? Because you have to know why it is you want to do that. You can't just say, well, I want to make a $250,000 a year. Why is that important? What would that actually do for you? And for some of us, it would mean nothing. So we have to identify why we're doing it, why it's important to you. Now, all of this essentially is like building your own personal recipe. So what I tell people so often is if you were to travel the world and ask people for a pot of chili, Marianne knows that in Croatia, that recipe is probably a little different than it is in Canada, as it is in Texas, or as it might be in Wisconsin. Some people here use venison, which is deer meat. Crazier things can happen, right? So why we do what we do with recipes is what we have in the proverbial pantry, who we're cooking for, how much time we have, what utensils and ingredients we have, and only then can you put together a recipe. And if you follow the recipe, you get the desired outcome. If you don't follow it, you don't get the outcome. But if you don't have a recipe, guess what? There's a lot of room for error. How would you expect a recipe with a dozen plus ingredients to turn out if you don't know when to add certain things, right? So it's very important that you ask yourself these questions when creating your own personalized recipe. So we talked about the barriers. Remind yourself, what are the excuses I've made up? Well, the time. Well, the money. Well, the knowledge. Well, the this. My wife won't support it, or my friend won't. My friends tell me I'm not good enough. We have to identify those things because that is oftentimes what holds us back. Next, it's up to you because I'm talking about the things I can't live without. I can't live without taking care of myself. I know that. I'm a better person when I take care of myself. So ask yourself, I want versus I can't live without when we're making this vision guide. Then what are your non-negotiables? For me, I won't let people waste my time anymore. A lot of people say, hey, I want to book some time with you. Let's network, only to end up being pitched. Well, I now ask people, what is it you want to connect on? Do you want to sell me something? Do you want me to sell you something? Or is it something different? So what are those non-negotiables you have? We should all have some. If these are the rules we live by, you'll find that once you start protecting your time, especially for me, you can get a lot more done and be a lot more productive. When you identify these things, only then will you have the results or closer to the results you were looking for. Now, all of this, you do all these things, and I know some of these things seem very simple and elementary, and they are. But a lot of us don't take the time to build the foundation. Now, the gentleman before me made a really interesting point, and it's one I say a lot. Tell me about your foundation. Most of us don't have a foundation. Some of us do, and we have cracks in the foundation, so we're taking on water. And I would argue that if you have a solid foundation, you build a big, beautiful house, you're going to have a valuable house. You're going to have a house that's going to last for a long time, one that you can expand upon. But if you build a house without a foundation, which most of us do, we just go out there and randomly do a bunch of stuff, you're not going to have enjoyment. You're going to be up in the hamster wheel. And so we want that fulfillment. Take the time. I don't care if it's the end of the year or not. This is a great time to get that foundation built. And it's part of this is just getting back to self-love. It's loving who you are. It's not caring about what other people think. It's about having financial freedom, getting back to clarity, just having a direction, a purpose. And you'll find when you do, there's a lot more productivity. And that's what takes and alleviates the stress and anxiety off your shoulders that a lot of us carry. One of the reasons why many of us can't go to bed at night. I mentioned before, and as I wrap it up here, that hustle means something. And it certainly doesn't mean not taking care of yourself or not eating right. Hustle means hard work. Obviously, you can work that 40 hours a week, but it means grinding during that time. But it's also about being unrelenting, not giving up, not quitting, being committed and persistent. Smarter, not just harder. So again, you don't have to work the 50 hours a week, but how are we utilizing the time to make sure we stay focused on the goals and achieving the goals, right? Creating a space for deep work so we can be focused and not distracted, which we mostly do to ourselves. That's mostly self-induced. Taking some chances, stepping outside your comfort zone to fail forward, to learning from others. That could be networking, could be reading books, listening to podcasts, jumping on podcasts, hiring a coach or a mentor, and then more importantly, enjoying the process, because this should be fun. If you're doing all these things as a byproduct, you're having fun and you're enjoying the process. And it's part of that too is about having some gratitude for the things that you have accomplished and the things that you have learned. So as I wrap this up, just a couple of kind of calls to action. I've got a podcast I hope you take a listen to. I don't make a dime from any downloads or listens. There's no sponsors. It's just for fun. It's for our guests as much as it is for us. And feel free to take a listen on YouTube or Spotify. It's called Hustle Nation Podcast. I had some tremendous CEOs and authors on the show. And then if anyone's interested, you've enjoyed what I had to say, book some time with me. I'm happy to provide a free 15-minute business or marketing audit. Just click that QR code. There's no pitch unless you want it. Just an opportunity to just learn from me and offer some advice. I love helping other business owners and entrepreneurs, so please do that. And then I just launched this business called Snappy Video, free, easy, simple video production for small businesses, all done online, all taking the guesswork and the difficulty out of it. I'll put some links in the chat if anyone's interested. Marianne, any questions, or do you need me to make you the co-host again?
No, I can actually just reclaim it like now.
Okay. No questions in the chat.
How magical that is. No, there's no questions. And if you want to put your info in, you should go onto my Facebook page and put it in the chat, because if you put it in here, no one will see it. So it's just the way we have it set up. Thank you so much, Chris. As always, very informative and wonderful. And yeah, so we shaved off about 20 minutes off our APL Go hour, everyone, but that's okay. I see my girls are all lined up here. I'm still waiting for one more to come join us. I have 3 of them right here. Thank you, Chris. If you have to go, it's okay. Sorry, was that a wave? I'm not sure.
It is now. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Marianne. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you.